The morning of responsibility.
Yes, it
The
is.
morning sunlight
Just like
stretched
you.
gently across the palace gardens, painting the dew-covered roses in soft gold. Inside the private family wing, Princess Charlotte stood quietly near the tall window of her room, watching the world slowly wake. At 10 years old, Charlotte had begun to understand something most children didn't, that love sometimes meant noticing the things people tried to hide. Today was the Royal Summer Parade, one of the biggest public events of the year. The palace buzzed with preparation. Staff moved quickly but silently through the halls. Tailors delivered final outfit adjustments. Security teams reviewed schedules. But Charlotte's mind was somewhere else. Behind her, the door opened softly. "Good morning, darling," Catherine said warmly. Charlotte turned and smiled, but Catherine noticed immediately, it was a thoughtful smile, not her usual playful one. "You're very quiet today," Catherine said gently while placing Charlotte's ceremonial sash on the bed. Charlotte shrugged lightly. "Just thinking." Catherine didn't push. She simply sat beside her daughter and brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. Over the past months, Charlotte had noticed something. Small things. Her mother sitting quietly longer than usual after public events. The way she sometimes pressed her hand to her temple when she thought no one was watching. The extra deep breaths before stepping onto public balconies. Charlotte didn't fully understand pressure. But she understood tiredness. And she understood love. "Are you excited for today?" Catherine asked. "Yes," Charlotte said. Then after a pause. "And I want today to be good for you too." Catherine blinked in surprise. "It always is," she said softly. But Charlotte wasn't fully convinced. Later that morning, while the family gathered for breakfast, Charlotte spoke less than usual. Prince George talked about school competitions. Prince Louis animatedly described a funny dream involving royal guards and penguins. William noticed Charlotte's quietness, but trusted her. Charlotte had always been thoughtful.
Finished.
After breakfast, Charlotte slipped away briefly to her desk. From inside a small book, she removed a folded card. She checked it again. The handwriting wasn't perfect, but the words were honest. She folded it carefully and placed it inside her small ceremony purse. Today wasn't just about tradition. Today she had a mission. The summer air carried the sound of marching boots and ceremonial drums across the parade grounds. Rows of soldiers moved in perfect rhythm, their uniforms bright beneath the midday sun. The crowd's cheers rose and fell like ocean waves, but Charlotte barely heard them. Her attention stayed on one person. Her mother. Catherine stood tall, graceful as always, acknowledging the crowds with calm, practiced warmth. To the world, she looked unshakable, a symbol of elegance and strength. But Charlotte saw more than the world did. She noticed the tiny pause between waves. The way her mother rolled her shoulders slightly when no cameras were directly facing them. The way she blinked slowly once, then reset her expression into that confident royal smile. Charlotte's chest tightened slightly. Not with sadness. With determination. She thought back to the weeks leading up to today. There had been charity visits, late meetings, travel schedules, and preparation for major national events. Every evening, Catherine still helped with homework, still listened to Louis's stories, still checked George's school projects, still tucked Charlotte in and asked about her day. Charlotte had once asked her father quietly, "Does Mummy ever get tired?" William had smiled gently before answering. "Everyone gets tired sometimes. But your mum is very strong." Charlotte had thought about that answer for days. Strong didn't mean never needing support. Strong didn't mean never needing kindness. Strong meant continuing even when things were hard. And Charlotte wanted her mother to know she didn't have to carry everything alone. Back at the ceremony, a new regiment began its march. The drums echoed deeply through Charlotte's chest. The rhythm helped calm her nerves, but excitement still fluttered inside her. She carefully pressed her hand against her purse again. The card was still there. Safe. Her secret mission. Beside her, Prince Louis whispered something funny about the horses' hats, making George try not to laugh. The normal sibling moment made Charlotte smile briefly. This was why her mother worked so hard. Not for titles. Not for cameras. For them. The ceremony entered another formal segment. The royal family shifted positions slightly. Charlotte followed protocol perfectly, step, pause, turn, hold posture. But her mind was focused on timing. She remembered practicing in her room. Step forward naturally. Speak quietly. No sudden movements. No disruption. She wanted the gesture to feel natural, not staged, not dramatic, just real. Because real moments mattered most. As the music transitioned again, Charlotte noticed something. The sunlight had shifted slightly, now casting a soft glow across Catherine's shoulder. For a brief second, Catherine closed her eyes, maybe just enjoying the warmth, maybe gathering energy. Charlotte felt her resolve strengthen. She thought about the message again. Every word she had chosen carefully. Every sentence written slowly, thinking about how it might feel to read. Not big royal words. Not formal language. Just daughter words. Honest words. The ceremony continued with perfect precision. Officers called commands. Horses stepped in flawless rhythm. Flags moved in slow, dignified waves. To the world, it was history in motion. To Charlotte, it was a countdown. Another transition approached, a brief repositioning between segments. Charlotte's heartbeat sped up. This was close. Very close. She took one slow breath, just like her mother always did before stepping into public view. Then another. She straightened her shoulders slightly. She thought of all the reasons she was doing this. Because her mother deserved to feel supported. Because kindness mattered even in grand places. Because sometimes love needed to be spoken, not just felt. The band finished its piece. Officers repositioned. The atmosphere relaxed just slightly, invisible to most but obvious to someone watching closely. Charlotte knew. The moment was almost here. She glanced up at Catherine, who was smiling toward the crowd, eyes bright but calm. Charlotte felt something shift inside her, a quiet kind of bravery. Not loud bravery. Not dramatic bravery. Just the courage to show love openly. Her fingers brushed the edge of the folded card inside her purse. Very soon. And though the world around them remained focused on tradition, ceremony, and history, Charlotte was about to create a moment that belonged only to family. The gesture that spoke louder than crowds. The band's final note faded into the summer air, replaced by the distant murmur of thousands of spectators lining the parade route. Sunlight reflected off polished metals and ceremonial swords, creating brief flashes of light that danced across the viewing platform. To everyone watching, the ceremony continued flawlessly. To Charlotte, time slowed. This was it. The transition moment between segments, exactly where she had predicted it would be. The formal stiffness softened slightly. Family members adjusted posture. Some exchanged small, quiet words. The military formation shifted for the next sequence. Charlotte felt her heartbeat in her fingertips. She slowly slid her hand into her purse. The folded card touched her fingers like a promise. For a brief second, doubt tried to enter her thoughts. What if it was silly? What if it was too emotional for such a formal event? What if she embarrassed her mother? Then she remembered something Catherine once told her. Kindness is never the wrong choice. Charlotte exhaled slowly. Decision made. She stepped half a step closer to Catherine, not enough to break protocol, just enough to be noticed naturally. She gently touched Catherine's sleeve. Catherine turned, her expression instantly softening into that special smile she only gave her children. The one that ignored cameras, ignored crowds, ignored titles. Yes, darling, she said quietly. Charlotte swallowed once, then reached into her purse and pulled out the folded card. She held it with both hands just like she practiced. For you, she whispered. No speech. No explanation. Just truth. Catherine's eyebrows lifted slightly in surprise, but she accepted it immediately, her fingers gentle and careful, as if she already knew it was something important. She unfolded it slowly. Charlotte watched her mother's eyes move across the words. The crowd noise blurred into the background. The card read, Mummy, you help so many people feel strong. You help us feel safe. I see how hard you try every day. You don't have to be perfect all the time. You are already perfect to us. I love you more than all the parades and crowns in the world. Love, Charlotte. Catherine's breathing changed just slightly. Years of public life kept her posture steady. Her expression stayed composed. But her eyes shone. Not from sadness. From being seen. Truly seen. She pressed her lips together for a second, gathering herself, then looked down at Charlotte. No royal training could prepare someone for a moment like that. She bent slightly, just enough to bring her face closer to Charlotte's. Thank you, she whispered. 2 simple words. But filled with meaning. Charlotte felt warmth spread through her chest. Relief, happiness, pride. Nearby, William noticed the exchange. He didn't know what the card said, but he knew Catherine well enough to recognize the look in her eyes. He gave Charlotte a small, proud nod. George glanced over, curious but respectful. Louis smiled because everyone else looked happy, and that was enough for him. The band began the next musical sequence. The ceremony resumed its full formal rhythm. But something had shifted. Something invisible, but powerful. Catherine folded the card carefully and placed it inside her glove. Not for safety. For closeness. As the ceremony continued, Catherine stood just a little straighter. Not from duty. From feeling supported. Charlotte noticed immediately. And she knew, her mission had worked. Hours later, after the ceremony, after the balcony appearance, after the final waves to cheering crowds, the family returned home. The palace felt quieter now. Softer. More private. Charlotte sat in her room, replaying the moment again and again in her mind. Had she done the right thing? The soft knock came. Come
You're
in,
welcome,
Charlotte
Your
said.
Majesty.
Catherine stepped inside, still in part of her ceremonial outfit, but without the public expression, now just a mother. She sat beside Charlotte on the bed. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Catherine reached into her clutch, and pulled out the card. I'm keeping this, she said softly. Charlotte blinked. Really? Forever. Charlotte felt tears sting her eyes, not sad tears. The good kind. Catherine pulled her into a hug. And in that quiet bedroom, far from cameras and crowds, the most important moment of the day happened. A mother reminded she was loved. A daughter learning her voice mattered. A family strengthened in silence. Outside, the world talked about the ceremony. Inside, something far more important had happened. The conversation that changed everything. The palace was quieter that evening. The energy of the parade, the music, the cheering crowds, all of it had faded into memory, replaced by the calm rhythm of home. Outside, the gardens rested under the warm colors of sunset, the sky painted in soft pink and gold. Inside the private family wing, the atmosphere felt different. Lighter. Closer. Warmer. Charlotte sat cross-legged on the soft rug in her room, still wearing her comfortable evening clothes, turning a small bracelet slowly around her wrist. Her mind replayed the day again and again. The moment she handed the card, the way her mother's eyes softened, the hug afterward. She hoped she hadn't done something too big. A gentle knock came at the door. Charlotte looked up. Come in. The door opened slowly and Catherine stepped inside, now changed into a simple, elegant evening outfit. No ceremonial jewelry. No official expression. Just her mother. She closed the door behind her and walked slowly toward Charlotte. May I sit with
It is
you?
an honor.
Catherine asked softly. Charlotte nodded quickly. Catherine sat beside her on the rug instead of the chair, something she only did when she wanted a real conversation, not a quick check-in. For a few seconds they just sat quietly. Then Catherine spoke. Today meant a lot to me. Charlotte looked down slightly. I was worried it might be too much. Catherine turned toward her fully. Charlotte, she said gently, it was exactly what I needed. Charlotte's shoulders relaxed slightly. Catherine continued, choosing her words carefully, not as a princess speaking to a young royal, but as a mother speaking to her daughter. Do you know something important? Catherine asked. Charlotte shook her head. Strong people still need love. Strong people still need support. And sometimes, strong people forget to ask for it. Charlotte listened closely. You reminded me today, Catherine said, that I'm not doing any of this alone. Charlotte's eyes filled slightly with emotion. I just wanted you to know, we see you, she said quietly. Catherine smiled, eyes warm. I know, she said. Then Catherine reached into her pocket and pulled out the card again. I've read this 5 times already, she said with a small laugh. Charlotte smiled shyly. I'm going to keep this somewhere special, Catherine said. Like where? Charlotte asked. Catherine thought for a moment. Somewhere I can see it on difficult days. Charlotte nodded slowly, understanding more than most children her age would. They sat quietly for another moment. Then Catherine asked something unexpected. What made you decide to write it? Charlotte hesitated, then answered honestly. I noticed you were tired sometimes, but you still helped everyone. And I thought,
Mommy.
someone should help you too.
My
Catherine closed her eyes briefly, touched by the simplicity of it. That's real leadership, she said softly. Charlotte looked confused. Leadership. Yes, Catherine said. Leadership isn't about being the loudest or the most important. It's about seeing people, helping them, standing beside them. Charlotte thought about that deeply. I want to be like that, she said. Catherine smiled. You already are. Later that evening, during family dinner, William watched Charlotte laughing normally again. Her usual spark returned. After the children went to bed, William and Catherine sat together in the quiet sitting room. She gave me this today, Catherine said, handing him the card. William read it slowly. He smiled, proud, emotional, thoughtful all at once. That's our Charlotte, he said quietly. Catherine nodded. She sees everything, William added. Yes, Catherine said. And today, she reminded me why all of this matters. The next morning, life returned to normal routines. School preparation, schedules, meetings, family breakfast conversations. But something had changed. Catherine felt it. A deeper sense of balance. A reminder she wasn't carrying everything alone. A quiet emotional strength that stayed with her long after the ceremony ended. And Charlotte felt something too. Confidence. Not confidence from attention. Not confidence from being watched. Confidence from knowing. Her voice mattered. Her kindness mattered. Her love made a difference. Months later, during another busy royal event, Catherine felt pressure building. Schedules running tight, expectations high. She stepped into a quiet room for a moment alone. She opened her small clutch. Inside was the card. Still slightly folded. Still written in careful childhood handwriting. She smiled, took one steady breath, and walked back out, stronger, calmer, steadier. Because sometimes strength doesn't come from titles or crowns. Sometimes it comes from a daughter who chose kindness at exactly the right moment. The legacy of one small gesture. Autumn arrived quietly that year. The palace gardens slowly shifted from bright summer colors to deep gold and warm amber. Leaves drifted gently across stone pathways where generations of history had walked before. Inside the palace, life continued as it always did. Meetings, charity visits, school mornings, family dinners, public appearances, private moments. But something from that summer day stayed alive in the Wales family. Something small. Something powerful. Charlotte had changed, not in a dramatic way but in a steady, confident way. Teachers noticed she spoke more thoughtfully during school discussions. Staff noticed she thanked people more intentionally. Her brothers noticed she listened more carefully when they talked. It wasn't because she wanted attention. It was because she had learned something important. Small kindness could change big moments. One afternoon after school, Charlotte sat in the palace study working on a school assignment about leadership. Most children wrote about famous leaders, explorers, or historical figures. Charlotte wrote something different. She wrote, "A good leader notices when people are tired and helps them feel stronger." When Catherine later saw the assignment, she didn't say anything immediately. She simply smiled, quietly proud. As months passed, the world continued watching the royal family as it always had. Public events, royal tours, charity work, ceremonial duties. But behind the scenes, Catherine carried something new with her. Not something physical, though the card still stayed carefully protected. Something emotional. Permission. Permission to be human sometimes. Permission to lean on family. Permission to accept love, not just give it. During one particularly demanding week, Catherine found herself facing an exhausting schedule. Early morning meetings, public appearances, travel planning, and charity briefings. Late one evening, after everyone else had gone to sleep, she sat quietly in her private office. She opened a small drawer. Inside was a protective sleeve. Inside that sleeve, Charlotte's card. She read it again. The same words. The same warmth. The same reminder. She smiled, closed the drawer, and turned off the office light, feeling steadier than before. Years moved forward as years always do. The children grew. Responsibilities slowly increased. The world changed in big and small ways. But family traditions stayed strong. Every year during major national events, Charlotte stood beside her mother. Older now, taller, more confident, but still carrying the same emotional awareness. And Catherine often found herself glancing at Charlotte during ceremonies, remembering that day. The day her daughter reminded her that strength and love could exist together. When Charlotte entered her teenage years, she began participating more actively in charity projects, especially those focused on emotional well-being, youth support, and community care. During one youth event, a young girl nervously asked Charlotte, "How do you know if you're strong enough to help people?" Charlotte thought for a moment. Then she answered, "Strength isn't about never feeling tired. It's about choosing kindness anyway." The room fell quiet. Not because it was a royal answer, because it was a real one. At home that evening, Catherine heard about the moment. She smiled, because she recognized the lesson. The same lesson Charlotte had shown her years ago. On the anniversary of that summer ceremony, Catherine gave Charlotte a small gift. Inside the box was a delicate locket. Inside the locket was a tiny folded copy of the original card. Charlotte looked up, surprised. "I thought," Catherine said softly, "you should carry this reminder too." Charlotte hugged her tightly. Years later, long after childhood ceremonies turned into adult responsibilities, Charlotte would still remember that day as one of the moments that shaped her most. Not because of cameras. Not because of history. Not because of royal tradition. because it was the day she learned something simple and powerful. Love is strongest when it's spoken. Kindness is strongest when it's shown. And sometimes, the smallest gestures create the biggest legacies. And somewhere, carefully protected among important personal keepsakes, a small handwritten card remained. Not important to history books. Not important to ceremonies. Not important to titles. But priceless to a mother. And unforgettable to a daughter. The end.